Hi, I'm Andrew Holzman. I work at Family Tree Counseling Associates. You can reach me at 317-457-8668 or aholzman2@comcast.net. Calling this video Addiction Takes Hostages. ACOAs are often the forgotten hostages in a family where there's addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction. This video was prompted by the recent revelation of Patrick Kennedy, the son of the deceased Senator Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was an alcoholic, according to Patrick. According to his brother, who came out a day or three later, he was not. And so two people in the same family had different perceptions of what their family was going through or experiencing or not experiencing. In my experience, this is not unique. Family members are not part of a collective or part of one mind. Different people in a family are going to perceive, and perception is reality for family members. Different people are going to perceive how the family is and how the family goes. Any type of issue, any trauma, any addiction, especially, and something like alcoholism, long-term alcoholism or long-term drug abuse is going to strongly affect the family. Depending on the age of the child, depending on the sex of the child, depending on the sex of the parent who is the addicted person, depending on the socioeconomic status of the family, depending on how strong the addiction is, or if the addiction is being worked on. These factors are going to be very powerful issues in a family, and issues in how it's perceived, how the addiction or how the pain or the trauma is perceived in the family. So let's take that a little bit at a time, right? If you're living in a family where there's addiction, and you're young, and your parent, your other parent, is protecting you from seeing that, then your thought and your feeling about that addiction is going to be very different than if you're an older child who is seeing how it's working out and seeing the problems that it's creating. If your parent is male and an alcoholic, which is more common, and you're a female child in this family, more likely you will try to deny and protect and defend that parent. And the same is true the other way around. If the parent is a female and you're a male child, you will do the same. You will try to defend that parent. So women who have mothers who are alcoholic, or boys, girls who have women who are alcoholics, and boys who have fathers who are alcoholics, will have much more trouble resolving it, and they will not deny it as easily, and they will be angry at their parent. So age matters, sex matters, if the person who is an alcoholic is trying to be in recovery matters, if it's talked about, if sometimes how your family is in terms of their ethnic origin matters. Certain ethnic types will talk more about issues than other ethnic types. So if, for instance, if it's a family that has issues, or an ethnic issues where things are not talked about, there are certain types of groups that don't talk about issues. They don't talk about them as easily, depending on what that group is. So more Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the WASP, is probably not going to talk about it as easily as, say, an Italian family, possibly. And I know these are stereotypical, but they've done studies, and some families, or a black family, may not talk about it as easily as an Irish family. I might be getting this wrong, and I don't have the studies in front of me, but different ethnic types will talk about these things in different ways. So depending on the ethnicity of the family, depending on the socioeconomic status. If it's a high socioeconomic status, there's more to protect and more to be shameful about in your mind. If it's a lower, they might not. Depending on, there's a lot of depending ons in this, how things are talked about. And all the meanwhile, the children, the spouse, are suffering. So often, the cure or the fix or the work is focused on the alcoholic or the drug addicted person, and the other people are having strong effects that will grow with them into adulthood. And so, we often talk about how someone from an alcoholic family will marry an alcoholic or will become an alcoholic, even though they may definitely vow not to follow in those footsteps. And so unless those things are dealt with, unless those feelings are dealt with, unless there's talk about it, because denial is a big deal in an addicted family. There's a family denial, there's a systematic denial, there's all types of denials that keep the system going, just like with Patrick and his brother. My brother and I, we did not grow up in an alcoholic family, but we grew up in different families. We talk about that often. My brother is almost 10 years older than I am, and when we talk about our family, we talk about it differently, especially in terms of my father, who treated us differently. My brother and I have different personalities. We view the world differently. They were in a different place when I came along as opposed to when my brother was born. And so we were treated differently, and we handled it differently. So even in a family where addiction is not as powerful, that is powerful. And so if you're in a family with this incredible trauma and incredible issues going on that cause pain and stress, and you're walking on eggshells possibly, and you're affected by all this, and you learn to adapt, well, that's what we talk about in terms of codependency. Codependency is just, initially, it came from working with alcoholics. It is the focus on the quote-unquote ill person and the lack of focus on self. If you learn not to focus on yourself and you learn to focus on an ill person, in relationships, you're going to search for an ill person to complete that agenda that started early. That's one possibility. Or you will become that person because that's how stress is handled. So my belief and the way to really work on this is to have less focus on the addicted person and more focus on the suffering family members. They must learn to talk about what's going on. They must learn to share it. They must learn to find ways to cope and adapt and not focus so much on the identified patient and focus more on their own needs. Thank you for listening. My name is Andy Holzman. I'm a marriage and family therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist in Indiana. I work for Family Tree Counseling Associates, and my number is 317-457-8668. There's a lot more to talk about in terms of this, a lot more. This is just a very brief beginning, a very brief summary. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.